Hello and welcome back. My name is Kristen and I'm a single mom motivator, and I really like to help single moms rediscover their self-worth and their purpose so that they can start moving forward in their lives. So today's topic is there is life after brokenness. And I talk about brokenness in my new book that's coming out. I talk about brokenness as a result of toxic relationships, and I talk about brokenness after relationships and the effect that it can have on your life. A lot of times we get into these relationships, and I'm just going to speak from the point of relationships because a lot of that comes from being with, relationships prematurely, getting in relationships prematurely when we're not really ready. And I have a lot of experience or background knowledge about brokenness and toxic relationships because I went through a really crazy phase in my life where that's all I was attracting because that was the energy that I was putting out. And so a lot of times we get into toxic relationships because we're not healed from a previous relationship, and we're carrying a lot of the weight and the hurt and the pain and the confusion and the unforgiveness with us. And so what we do is we put this big Band-Aid on it and cover it up and act like it's okay, and then we move forward. And that's exactly what happened to me. I was really hurt by my son's father. I was disappointed that we didn't work out. I felt like a failure. I wanted to have this relationship with this man that I just had a baby by. We were together for 4.5 years, and I wanted something more. I was at the point where I wanted to be married, and I wanted to have a fulfilled, committed relationship. And that didn't happen the way that I expected. It didn't turn out the way that I wanted. And what hurt the most is that he actually married someone else about a year later, and that hurt me to the core. And I don't really speak about it very much, but I did speak about it in my book. But what happened was I literally put this big Band-Aid on that hurt, and I kept moving forward, and I was masking my hurts because I wanted to prove somehow to him that I was okay and that I'm going to get you back. I'm going to get you back for the hurt that you caused me. And so I'm going to move forward in another relationship, although I was broken into pieces and I was so bitter and hurt. But I was trying to do that to give him the impression that I was okay, that I would be just fine. Since you moved on, I can move on too. So I was really trying to prove this point. And I did not realize how destructive that point in my life was until I got into these relationships. And so I had all this toxic energy inside of me and all this hurt, all this pain, and I carried it onto the next relationship. And that became a disaster because I was a disaster, and naturally I was attracting disaster. And I moved on from that, even more hurt, because now I'm hurt because that didn't work out. So put a big Band-Aid on that hurt. So I'm now compounding more and more Band-Aids of hurt and pain and confusion and brokenness. And my heart is just crumbling more and more. And so here I go again, moving on to another relationship, not healed from the previous 2 relationships. And I just was in this point of just confusion, not understanding why I wasn't able to move forward. Why was I getting stuck? Why did I keep attracting the wrong type of men? Why was I keep getting hurt? Why did I keep having that same energy around me? And it literally took me getting to a relationship with a man who was 14 years older than me, and I speak about this in my book, who was very verbally abusive to me. Hey, Apostle, thank you for joining me. Very verbally abusive, but I didn't see the red flags early on because I still had this mindset that I was trying to hurt him and get him back. And the way that I was trying to hurt him was to retaliate by getting with someone else. So I honestly told this guy that was 14 years older than me very early in the relationship that I wanted to be married and all this stuff. And he literally, so he started showing some crazy signs early on. But again, I ignored the red flags because I was at this point of desperation. I was so tired of all these failed relationships. And hold on one second. I gotta block somebody. Okay, so I was so tired of all these failed relationships that I was desperate. I was like, you know what? Look, I'm trying to be married, blah, 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 blah. This is what I want, this and this and that. So I honestly made a big mistake because I wasn't ready. I was still masking the hurt and the pain and hadn't gotten over that. Come to find out that this man was totally opposite of who he said he was. Started to lie very early in a relationship, started to hide things, then started to get very manipulative and very controlling. I stayed because, again, I was hurt, I was confused, I was afraid to let go, and I was honestly acting very desperate and insecure. He proposed to me, right? But by the time he had proposed to me, I had already caught on to all the red flags that I had been kind of were there, but I wasn't paying attention to those red flags as much. Caught on to the red flag, and it was too late. It was like, oh my gosh, this man just proposed to me. What do I do at this point in my life? I might as well, because, hey, what do I have to lose? Nobody. In my head, I was like, you know what? Nobody else is going to want me at this point in my life. And that's how low I was in myself. I didn't have the self-love. I didn't have the self-worth. I didn't have the self-esteem or the confidence. So I was taking whatever I could get at that point. All along, he was verbally abusive, very emotionally controlling. And it was just a lot of headache, a lot of pain. I accepted the proposal because, like I said, I was desperate. I was saying I wanted all these things, but I wasn't able to really recognize that I had to wait on God first, that I was trying to rush the situation before God, and I did not recognize how much hurt and pain that I was in prior. Long story short, I actually had applied to move overseas right before this proposal, and I actually got accepted for the position to move. And so lo and behold, that was like my ticket out of here, because the relationship started to escalate to a point where I didn't know if I was going to be safe. I started to feel really, really isolated. I was starting to break relationships with my closest friends and my family. Everybody was really concerned with me. He was even really mean and angry toward my son, who at the time was only, I think he was like 4. Sharing all that part of my life and experience with you to show that there's still life after brokenness. So even though I went through all that brokenness and that pain, God removed me from those situations and put me in a place of wilderness. I call it my wilderness season. I was in a wilderness season for about a year and a half, where I literally was not in a relationship. I was celibate. I was living in a completely different country, and I was really finding myself. I was finding God, and I was really finding my purpose. And that was so eye-opening and real for me, because I needed that. I needed that isolation and separation so that I can start getting back to my root and my purpose and my inner being on who I am, and start regaining my confidence, my self-worth, regaining the self-love, and learning how to heal, learning how to forgive, learning how to let go, learning how to unleash what's already in me and the strength that was in me already to be able to stand up against whatever lies people were telling me about, that I wasn't going to be anything or wasn't going to get anybody or whatever. And also trying to stop competing with my ex, stop trying to hurt him. I had to learn to forgive him during that wilderness season. I had to learn to forgive myself. I had to learn to forgive every other relationship that I got into after. And I had to learn how to trust God in the next season of my life. And it was the most, like I said, eye-opening experience that I could have ever had, because it put me in a completely different mindset. I want to encourage you that if you've ever been in my situation, where you've been in some broken, toxic relationships, where you were feeling broken, where you felt like you just were out of your element, that you didn't understand why you kept hitting brick walls in relationships, I just want to let you know that there is hope, that there is a future, that you can and will heal. But it takes a willingness on your part, and it takes recognition. It takes letting go. It takes letting God. It takes recognition and acknowledgement of that hurt. It takes finding the root cause of the hurt. It takes understanding where the root cause came from. Maybe there's some issues in your childhood that you dealt with that is preventing you to move forward in your life. There's so many different elements that you have to consider when you are trying to heal, because healing is a process. It's a journey. It's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to probably happen in a week or two. It takes time. It takes time. And one thing that I know for sure, which is the mistake that I kept making, was keep jumping in and in relationships, is sometimes that you need to isolate yourself in a way, in a healthy way, of meaning not getting in relationships with people too fast, not rushing into relationships. So many times we as women, we try to prove a point to everybody else. Because I'm a single mom, because of this, because of that, I need to get into a relationship with this man so that I can appear to the rest of the watching world that I'm okay. And it's not okay. It's not okay to rush into something that is not healthy for you at that moment. But what is healthy for you is to recognize that a healing is needed, that you need to take time for yourself. You need to take time to rediscover who you are, what your heart is telling you, what your spirit is telling you, and to renew yourself, because brokenness is real. So many times there's so many broken men and so many broken women out here that we keep going and going and going without really taking the time to heal. And so it is so crucial, because we don't want to continue to create broken marriages, broken families. I'm a product of a broken family, and my son is a product of a broken family because I did not marry his father. If you're just watching this and just coming in, definitely watch the replay, because I share my testimony and my story about where my brokenness started. And I don't really think it just started with that particular relationship. I think it started way back in childhood. I think sometimes we deal with a lot of rejection, and we don't understand what rejection really means, and we don't know how to identify rejection or call it. And so sometimes with that rejection spirit, we're under this assumption that people are always going to leave us, or that we're not going to have enough. So we put off that energy of desperation, and always are in attracting like-minded people who are also just as broken and toxic as we are. So I want to encourage you if you know of somebody, or if you yourself have dealt with brokenness. It is okay. It is a part of life. It's a part of the growth process. It's a part of love. It's a part of vulnerability. It's a part of releasing your heart. Sometimes even just simply releasing your heart to another person is very courageous. To be able to trust somebody with your feelings, with your innermost being, is a lot, especially if you've had your heart broken before. And so I commend you for even taking a first step to heal. I commend you for even opening your heart to love again. I commend you for starting over, for even considering relationship. I commend you for still having hope, for love, for marriage, for whatever it is that you're seeking from God. And I know that it will come for you. And I pray that your healing happens immediately. I pray that right now that you are on a process to healing. I pray that healing is manifested in your life in every capacity, and that God has his favor on you. I really, really do, because we need more healing in our relationships, in our communities, in our homes, in our marriages, in our relationships. Because we cannot keep producing generations of brokenness. We cannot keep producing our children without two parents in the household. Our families, especially Black families, are missing that. I believe in a two-parent household. I grew up in a two-parent household up until I was 12, and then my parents divorced, and I saw my parents go through a very nasty divorce, a very, very nasty divorce, and it was very traumatic for me. I saw my mother go through different toxic relationships based on her hurt. And although sometimes I do believe in generational curses, we have the ability and the authority to break generational curses. I know that my life was going down that way of being in the same cycle of hurt and pain that my mother went through after her divorce, and I didn't want to go through that. So I had to make a decision to either stay or go. And I had to go because I needed to get out of that confused state. Because it's also a part of self-love. If we're constantly in and out of these broken, toxic relationships, and if we're constantly dealing with brokenness without healing, that is not an act of self-love. Self-love is recognizing when you need to stop, reflect, and take some time to heal. I have a what do you do now? What can you do now section, which is basically my feedback to you on what you can do to start applying what I talk about to your personal life right now, because I'm very solutions based. I do believe I like to talk and to give feedback, but I also like to give solutions to how you can work through these issues. And so number one would be stop having a pity party. That's my number one. Don't have a pity party. It's okay. You can get up, brush yourself off, look in the mirror and say, let's go. Let's go, girl. We got some work to do. And that's that. We got some work to do. It's all to the good. It's going to be good, but do not have a pity party. Have a celebration. And your celebration is in victory over every single thing that is coming against you, that's attacking you right now, and your emotions and your flesh and your spirit. So you have to have a celebration and not a pity party. Number two, and I've mentioned this already, is know that you have to heal and move on for you and nobody else. It's not about your ex-boyfriend. It's not about your ex-girlfriend. It's not about your parents. It's not about your friends. It's not about the rest of the watching world who's asking a million more questions like, where's your man? Girl, why did you break up with him? What's going on with you? It's not about them. It's about you. It is about you. Your healing is about you, because you deserve it. You deserve to be healed. You deserve to let go of whatever hurt you from your past. You deserve to have a whole heart, because somebody else desires your wholeness. Somebody else needs that in their life. Somebody needs your love. Somebody needs to experience you fully. And if you're broken, they won't be able to experience that. And you deserve to experience somebody else's wholeness in their heart. Number three is seek help. Us in the Black community, we shy away from therapy. We shy away from counseling. We shy away from all these things because it's a sign of weakness if we reach out to get help. But it's not. I've personally been in therapy. I've personally had coaching. I've had these things because I believe that we can't always do it by ourselves. If there's even just someone to listen to you, listening, maybe helping you work through the issues in your head. Maybe you have things that are going around in your head in circles and you can't figure out how to make sense or rhyme or reason out of them. Sometimes just talking to somebody can be so therapeutic. You have to figure out who you can trust. And sometimes going to a therapist or a counselor to work out your problems, honestly, is probably the best thing that you could do with that in that moment of confusion, especially if you're dealing with that hurt and that broken. Number four is learning to let go so that you can make room for more. So if you're constantly holding on to your past hurts about what your ex did to you, you can't make room for the new person that's going to come into your life because you're still in the past. So if you're holding on to the hurt, your heart is so wound up and bound in pain that if a new man walks into your life, or if you're a guy and a new woman walks into your life, you wouldn't even know how to recognize that or accept that person because you're so bitter and hurt. And so you have to understand that everything happens for a reason. Everything happens for a reason. That person walked out of your life for a reason. You walked out of that person's life for a reason. Things didn't work out with that person for a reason, or things did work out with that person for a reason. That person came back in your life for a reason. Everything happens for a reason. But trust the energy that you receive from people, and trust your gut, trust your heart. You know your heart is fragile and you know it's special. You are a very special kind of person, so you can't let anybody come in and out of your life. But the fact that you have trusted somebody with your heart, it says a lot about you because you're courageous, and a lot of people don't do that. A lot of people suffer in silence, and they go to be single because they're afraid to open their heart again. And I think that's the worst thing you do, because we always need relationships. Relationships are what life is all about. So we always need relationships, whether they're friendships, platonic, male and female relationships, or romantic relationships. You always need good relationships. And my last but not least, but probably the most important thing to do, my number 5, is forgive yourself. So we are always focused on forgiving somebody else because they hurt us, and I believe that you should definitely forgive other people because you don't want to hold on to unforgiveness. Unforgiveness is a sin, and that it's just too much energy to consume of worrying about what somebody did to you 10 years ago, not letting that go. It's too much. It's just too much. So the one person that you do need to forgive right away is you. Because a lot of times we forget to forgive ourselves. Because we're like, oh my gosh, I went right back to the same person that hurt me so bad. Or I keep making the same mistakes. Or I keep repeating the same cycles. Or this keeps happening. Or I did that again. And you blame yourself. And you put yourself in this box. And you never forgive yourself for whatever you put yourself through. And I'm here to tell you, just from my own personal experience, that I've had to forgive myself 1,000,001 times because I have made a lot of mistakes. But that's life, and it's learning, and it's living, and that's just part of growing on your journey, and that's part of the process. And so don't get so down on yourself, because you have to learn to love yourself enough to let go and forgive yourself and move forward. You deserve that. Your love for yourself is so incredibly crucial right now. And the love that you have for yourself is going to help you heal that broken heart. It's going to help you heal through your brokenness. All right. So I'm going to jump off of here, but I really do appreciate you all for watching. You can check out my blog at KristenJWoodruff.com. Peace, peace, peace to you. Have a wonderful and blessed evening.